everybody. Welcome to the 96th episode of the Manor Podcast. I'm your co-host, Bodee, joined as always with my best friend and other co-host, Michael Hamilton. Michael, it's the best of times. It's the worst of times. It's the yin and the yang every day. It's just the darkest of darks and the brightest of brights.
What's going on?
The darkest of darks. The unerrated enchanting melody.
Oh, no.
It doesn't have a word anymore.
Your favorite, the Ward 4 with Go Again, is not Ward.
It was so close. It was so close. It was the time. It was the time for enchanting melody to shine and all my prophecies and premonitions to come true about that card finally being good.
Mm-hmm.
They took it away from me. They took it away.
I'm sorry, buddy.
It's okay. And then I'll look to the positives, away from flesh and blood, to the bright, hopeful future of Alpha Clash. Because all the stupid zero-cost Clash buffs are gone. Woo! The game's playable. We did it. Woo!
I really think the game played fine with them, but I do think it is better for the game that they're gone. I think like the game's actually played fine, but the hero diversity was very limited by who can actually play the zero-cost Clash buff. So like the Ming ban is just very good for diversity. It means the format should be quite a bit more open than it was before.
Yeah. It was just... People would inevitably ask me about Alpha Clash over the past few months, and I would say the game's really good. There's a really good core system. There's just 4 or 5 cards that need a ban, and the game will like really shine. And they're like, what? And I'm like, okay, so you play Magic, right? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, imagine if Giant Growth cost 0 and then also drew you a card and your opponent couldn't respond to it after you played your Giant Growth on like defense. And they're like, that sounds broken. And I was like, yeah.
Yeah. Split second mutagenic growth that draws a card and doesn't cost 2 life.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're gone.
It's gone.
Alpha Clash looking good. They did a few other changes that I think were a lot smaller than banning the zero cost Clash buffs, but they will impact the game. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to Origins, especially after this announcement. I gotta figure out how I'm gonna get my Alpha Clash testing in between all this flesh and blood I've got going on.
Yeah, dude, we gotta prep for nationals. I've done a couple drafts now in the Runaways queue, and drafting this format's really hard after scrubbing the draft format, or this top 8 draft in the Battle Hardened, and then I've yet to 3-0 a pod so far. I've only done like 3 drafts, but still, it's a hard format.
My first draft went great. The format seemed real easy. I drafted new. I got 3 red hisses and a yellow hiss, and I 3-0'd. It was clean.
I feel like... So it's interesting to see how the perception kind of shakes out among people over time on draft metas. I think we saw that a lot over heavy hitters, where people's evaluations of Guardian kind of waxed and waned as the format went on. But I would say right now, new stocks are at an all-time low in draft. I think everybody that I talk to, or in a lot of the queues, new, and sometimes Zen are a little underdrafted. I think Zen might have just been a weird pod because people do like him quite a bit because he's perceived to be the counter to the best hero in the format, which is Enigma, and the hero we're going to talk about for the rest of the episode, right?
Yeah, though I think this episode's a little more geared at constructed. I'm sure there will be some limited applicable things that we talk about.
Yeah, but real quick, jumping one step backward to Alpha Clash and the Realm Games, sponsor of this podcast. Now that Alpha Clash is going to have the new set and a healthy, diverse metagame and lots of cool new metagame things to explore and a super fun time that everybody will be assured to have at the Origins Game Fair in Columbus the week after Nationals. I am booking my hotel. I will be there with my wife and son for a lovely weekend away after Nationals with them. And go sign up for the Clash Grounds event at Origins Game Fair, sponsored by The Realm.
Yeah, that's going to be a great time. I'll be there too. And I'm looking forward to it, especially with this new shaped up format, like you said. I got a question for you.
Yeah, I have an answer for you.
How long till Austin's playing these tournaments?
Probably sooner than people might expect. He's real smart. It's crazy. Like I was going a week in Japan,
Mhm.
and I always would joke like, I'm gonna come home one day and he's gonna be like, "Hello, father, how are you doing?" After I'm away from a trip, and he's getting pretty close to that. Like his sentence structure is getting more complex. Like he's like, uh, understanding like concepts and like what we're saying on like more nuanced levels again. Uh, I would say what we messed up on though for too long is we'd be like Austin baby or calling him baby for too long. So now he refers himself as baby all the time. He's like, baby's walking, baby's
That's so
pick up
funny.
the Squirtle, and I'm like, oh no, we got to correct this now. So I don't refer to him as baby anymore in front of him. I'm like,
Ah,
this is
baby.
it's like Austin's walking with Dada. Austin's holding Charmander, because I guess now that you've asked me about my son, I'm going to go on a whole Austin right here. I came home from Japan with a Charmander, Squirtle, and a Bulbasaur, and
Mhm.
put them out in front of him. And I was like, which one do you want? And he picked up Charmander, and then he was carrying around Charmander the whole day. And then the second day, I was like, okay, Squirtle and Bulbasaur are left. Which one do you want? And then he picked up Squirtle, and he had Squirtle and Charmander. But then halfway through the day, he's like, wait a second, Bulbasaur's still up there. I want Bulbasaur. So we got Bulbasaur today. I kind of laid it out to pick up his preferences.
Aw. He just likes them all.
Yeah, I mean they're nice plushies. I got them from the Pokemon Center in Japan. Uh, they seem pretty high quality. My wife got the Alola Vulpix because that's one of her favorites. She likes regular Vulpix, but I couldn't find a regular Vulpix, so she got a Alola Vulpix and an Eevee. And I have a Chansey somewhere around here because Chansey's my favorite Pokemon.
I didn't know that. Chansey's a good one.
I love Chansey; it's so cute.
Mhm.
But enough about Chanseys and babies and alpha clashes. Let's talk about the new illusionist that everybody is talking about in Enigma. Because you specifically requested we do this stupid episode on a Friday. We're recording so early this week because you're like, I can't break Enigma, and then I don't want to hold back all the Enigma tech, but I want to work on Enigma. So this way you could be straightforward and honest about everything you know about Enigma up till this point, but then start working on it for nationals and really break it, right?
Uh, I'm not sure if I'm bringing Enigma to nationals. She's definitely in the list of heroes that I'm actually going to put in the time to see if it's what I want to be bringing to nationals. Some of her lines are very far above rate, and some of these lines only involve blue cards, which is sick because I love blues. It's like I've kind of been looking at her like Icelander and Prism kind of mixed together. You take like the parts of Icelander that are sweet, you get a bunch of blues, you get to play on your opponent's turn a little bit, and you have some disruption that can line up really well if you're careful with it. And you put it with Prism, who is like, I'm going to build up a board state, and then you're going to die to my board state, and that's just like one hero together, and it's a powerful combination. I don't know if she'll be as good as either of those two heroes were, but I think Enigma is definitely worth looking into.
Okay. So it's interesting that you say that because I've been kind of feeling like news, kind of like the amalgamation of Icelander and Uzuri, which has been an interesting combination. So uh, I've been still after our initial new episode, I've kind of kept with the new bug and been putting a lot of time and effort into new. So I'm either going to play new or Bolton at nationals. It's looking like so. Yeah, but we already did our new episode. So tell me about some of these sweet new cards and Enigma that you've been trying out then.
So I think most people would agree this is like the most obviously powerful card that's specific to Enigma. I'm not going to talk about levels of enlightenment. I've talked about that both in Zen and in New. It's just broken new Mystic Blue that you should probably play in all of your Mystic decks because it's a broken card. But,
Yeah, especially played against new. Played against new, please.
Don't
I banished.
You don't want it in your banish zone against New.
I just played a game on Talishar and I banished 2 of them in a turn, and I had 2 chi in my pitch zone, so I got to have all these
0 for 3 draw
again.
a card go again.
Yeah,
you had 2 blues
over and over again on the turn. It was sick.
Anyway, yeah, that card's very good. Maybe if you build your deck in a way that can sideboard out against New, I think that's actually a reasonable consideration just because of how good it is when she plays it back from your banish zone. But anyway, you should play the card. It's very good. But the best card that's specific to Enigma, I think, is this manifestation of Miragai. It's a 3-mana blue Mystic Illusionist aura instant. And it enters with 2+1 counters unless you pitch a chi. If you pitch a chi, it enters with 4+1 counters on it. And it has ward X, where X is the number of +1 power counters on it. So this, in combination with the new weapon, Cosmo something. Cosmo Scroll of Ancestral Tapestry. I'm just going to call it Cosmo from now on.
Yeah, but now we need Wanda.
Basically, if you play this thing by pitching a blue chi, then there's 4+1 attack counters on it, and then it costs 1 to attack for 8 go again with Cosmo, and that's really good. So you spend 2 cards to play it, then you spend another resource to attack for 8, and then it still has ward 4 on the back end, which that's a 2 cards to play it plus maybe 1 card to attack with it, like a third of a card if you're able to, or even a Tunic resource, because you can play Tunic to attack for it. It could be a 2-card 12, or at worst it's a 3-card 12, but 3-card 12 still very, very good, and it doesn't cost your action point either. You pitch a blue to play it, it's an instant, and then it has go again if you attack with Cosmo. There are the other weapons available to Enigma as well. She can play Iris of Reality and Reality Refractor. I think those are the names. Okay. And it's not quite as broken in with those weapons, but it still is pretty good. If you have Iris, usually a lot of the time you're spending a card and an action point to get one of your blue auras down. But this you can play as an instant. It gets +4 attack, so you attack for 8 with it still. It just costs 3 resources to attack with instead of 1. So slightly worse, but still very good. And Reality Refractor as well. That one, you spend 2 resources to attack for 5, then it costs your action point. And again, you have to spend 2 cards and no action point instead of a card and action point to develop it, but it attacks for 4 more than your blue auras. So I think this card is very good. I think it's definitely belongs in a Cosmo list. If you're playing the other weapons, it probably still good enough, honestly. Being a blue and being an instant, there's going to be a lot of spots where you just want this kind of effect. That doesn't cost you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I will say, I think the Iris builds might be a little bit more awkward, but because the strongest part of Enigma's ability with the Cosmo weapon is that your first Spectral Shield is then free to attack with every turn. If you're playing Iris instead, it would be 2 resources to attack with. And yeah, so I think it'd be harder to get a lot more value out of the cost reduction of activating Spectral Shields with non-Cosmo weapons in the deck.
It's interesting because like it still costs a full card to do Iris attacks, but a key part of why you'd play Iris over Reality Refractor is because your auras get go again as well when you attack with them. So presumably you could put some 1-cost cards in your deck to end on after doing that. One that I would vouch for and really encourage you to try is Levels of Enlightenment. It costs 1. So if you have 2 auras and a Levels of Enlightenment, maybe a Spectral Shield and like a Haze Bending or something, another aura after they killed your Haze Bending, you attack with a shield for 2, you attack with the other aura for 4. Or sorry, for 2 resources, it attacks for 4. Then you attack with the other aura for 4. Then you'll have 2 cards in your pitch zone, 2 blues in your pitch zone, 1 floating. You can play Levels of Enlightenment for 5, draw a card at the end. Very, very clean line. 3-card 13 that draws a card. Yeah. So I don't think Iris is inherently bad. You just really have to make sure your deck is capable of spending that last 1 resource at the end, or do something proactive with it, basically.
Yeah, definitely makes sense.
So
there's a lot of good auras that cost 1 as well, too.
Yeah. There's a lot of good auras at basically every cost points. It's just figuring out which ones you want in your deck based on the cost curve.
Yeah.
I guess there's one less good 2-cost aura after Enchanting Melody's gone. R.I.P.
Don't keep breaking my heart like this, Michael. I can't handle it.
I'm sorry. But yeah, so Enigma's play pattern is pretty strong. You can either develop these auras and block to protect them, or just let them die and develop new ones and attack them again. And a lot of these auras are just like assuming your opponent kills them the next turn by exactly popping the ward, so like a ward 3, they would spend 3 damage to kill it. They're all pretty on rate. And we talked about this a little bit in the first impressions of the set episode, where even like the commons are just like at rate and limited. So if your opponent doesn't break them, then you're just like going way above rate, because suddenly your thing that was already at rate, you could attack with it again for the low cost of 1 extra resource, or 0 in the case of the first spectral shield. So I think playing as Enigma, you're going to be developing auras and attacking with them, and then either hopefully blocking your opponent out some of the time. Maybe they're weaker turns, you can block them out and they can't clear them to keep your auras, so you can basically go above rate with them. Or you're just playing auras and not worrying about protecting them and just waiting for your opponent to have a stumble turn, or maybe you're using offensive disruption like Command and Conquer, for example, to play an aura attack with it and then send another disruptive attack afterwards. And they either have to block that with their hand, or they lose their arsenal, and maybe that makes them unable to re-pressure your wards. And this is kind of the first time we've had these permanent sources of damage that you can actually protect by blocking with cards in your hand. Both dragons from Dromai and Prism spectral auras you couldn't block for. Even our other allies, like we saw Chain and Levia both got their shadow allies, and I think Vincent did as well. And none of those you can block for, you can just attack them. And then even with new Prism 2s, angels that have ward on them, they also have a health value and can be attacked. So you can't block for them either. So sometimes your opponent will go face with weird breakpoints to try to like pop your angel and deal like for like less than sending 4 damage on it. Like they might Kadachi you when you have an angel, for example. But if you wanted to, you could always just attack an angel and kill it with those angels. And that's not the case with Enigma's auras. If you want to kill them, you have to leak damage through over her blocks to pop the ward. And that's something that's pretty powerful. And depending on how strong she ends up being, I could see it being problematic, where I'm already like, I don't think Guardians have been in a good spot for a while, but I don't know how you're supposed to beat Enigma with a Guardian.
Yeah. Yeah. Even before it was the classic when Prism existed, I remember sometimes you would be playing Oldheim back in the day, and they'd resolve just like I already had said this already. The stupid one that makes 3 spectral shields the instant. Prismatic shield. They'd resolve it like a red prismatic shield, and it would feel like the game was just over, because you could just never get to them again for the rest of the game. And then they'd set up more auras, and then that just kind of created this like buffer space of like just like that ward 3 even was enough to just like kind of run away with the game. Mm-hmm. Except now, instead of 1 prismatic shield being able to run away with the game with that ward buffer, it's every card in Enigma's deck.
Yeah, and the rates on Enigma's current ward auras are generally a better deal than prismatic shield even red was, because red was you were paying 3 resources for essentially ward 3 of auras, and now you can get that a lot cheaper. There's a 1 cost instant that has ward 3. There's 2 cost instants that have ward 3 and have bonuses if you have blue in your pitch zone. It's the rate is more pushed than prismatic shield was, and even that was like a pretty solid card and saw a lot of play in Prism decks.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've been thinking like maybe it's time to like look at Bravo, and Victor got this new specialization. Maybe I was wrong about Victor. And then I look at Enigma and I'm like, nah, I'm good. And new as well. And I'm like, nah, these 2 heroes are going to be extremely popular. A lot of people have a lot of hype around them. Guardian stonks all-time low, I would say.
Yeah. We talked about that a bit on the new episode, where if you have really strong blues, it can be really rough, and Guardians are basically known for their really strong blues. And that issue, along with the Enigma matchup being like, yeah, I just don't think you should be bringing Guardian to a high level event and expecting to do well. If maybe you can do well at your like local armories or even ProQuest and Road to Nationals, especially if the Mystic heroes aren't very popular in your area. I think Guardians they're fine against KO and Azalea and the other top decks. But
are they fine against KO? I thought Guardian versus KO was like not good.
You can build your Guardian deck to be okay against KO. You have to really like leverage the fatigue angle, but it's not that bad. I guess like Bravo more specifically. I think Victor really struggles into KO because your clash mechanic is not very good against KO.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I think Bravo, you can warp your deck to be like reasonable against KO, but it's going to make it even worse against Enigma if you do play against her.
Yeah.
So,
okay. So I've been seeing a lot of hype around one card in particular, around Enigma. And at first I was like, I don't really get it. This card seems fine. And then you and I were playing some games yesterday, and I was like, oh, I get it. This card's broken. It's the Manifestation of Miragai card, where like it's just been attacking me for like 6, 8 damage pretty consistently. And I'm like, I see, because it's just doubling the power basically.
Yeah, because you get 4 counters on it as long as you pitch a chi, which I think you can run a pretty good number of Transcend cards in your Enigma deck. She's pretty good at using resources. Her attacks cost resources to use. And then these blue cards are pretty good when you get to play them and then Transcend and get the resource back. You get like your 1 point of value plus your 3 resources back. That's a pretty good deal. And that in combination with the new Mystic Legendary Hat, Traverse the Universe, where when you block with it, you can search your deck for a chi, lets you pretty consistently get out the dragon or a Miragai.
Manifestation of Miragai.
Yeah, I'm just gonna call it Miragai.
I thought we were just over Miragai. It's back.
Yeah, we got through the Miragai that Guardians kept dying to, and they made another Miragai that Guardians are gonna die to. It's great.
Woohoo! Wow.
So, yeah, the card's very good because, like I was saying earlier, if you pitch a chi to it, if they pop it on their first turn, you're getting 12 points of value, which is 2 cards and a resource for 12 points of value is huge. And if they ever don't pop it, you have 1 resource, 8 go again.
Yeah.
That's so much. That's so much damage for 1 resource.
Yeah. So, definitely been super impressed with that card so far. Any other any standouts for you?
Yeah, I think Waxing Spectre. It's the common Mystic Illusionist aura instant. It costs 2. If you pitch a blue to play it, it enters with a +1 counter and it has ward 3. This is just pretty consistently 2 cards 7 go again. Again, if they don't kill it, you get to go above rate the next turn. I think this is probably the best of the common auras, both in limited and in constructed.
Yeah, I was about to say, well, this is like a windmill slam pack 1, pick 1, and hope Enigma's open in your pod.
Yeah, because it's just so good. You 4 go again is just, it's a lot of damage, and the 3 ward on it, it's pretty easy to get 7 out of this. And if you ever protect it, you're just cruising. And something you can do with this card is sometimes you just like, they play their turn, and then on your turn you can play like 2 of these, and then maybe they can clear 1 on their turn. But if you just keep 1 around, you're gonna get the value. So yeah. So the fact that it doesn't break, or it goes above rate, because I would say 7 is kind of on rate for 2 cards and an action point. Like you look at Red Raging Onslaught, you're getting 7, and in constructed you're trying to break rate, but this card kind of just breaks rate by itself because it has go again. So you don't usually spend 2 cards for 7 with go again. Another really common play pattern with this card is you just pitch a blue, you play it, attack with it, and then you play a Haze Bending. 3 cards, you get your Haze Bending. If they kill it, you're getting your Spectral Shield back. It's just really good, really strong.
Haze Bending, I thought, used to be kind of annoying in Prism. It's like all new levels of just like, I can't stand that card now. Every time Haze Bending is on that and Shimmers, I'm just like, I have to attack their face because there's all these ward auras on the battlefield. I have to clear those, but if I clear the ward auras, and they get value from their Haze Bending, so I have to attack the Haze Bending, but then they keep all their ward auras on the battlefield. And it's just like, I just feel stuck, and I'm sad, Michael. The gameplay patterns they're very... They nailed the illusionist vibe with Enigma, because you just feel like you're just swinging your fists wildly in the air, but never actually hitting anything tangible.
Yeah, I still think we're jumping around a little bit, but I think Haze Bending is very good in this deck, and every version of Enigma. It doesn't matter what weapon you're playing. I think it's probably at its worst in Cosmo, but it's still quite good in Cosmo. It's just so good. I think this card honestly probably shouldn't exist as long as we're having weapons that make your auras able to attack Haze Bending.
Yeah.
It's problematic. It's really good. I don't know. I guess I say a lot of cards shouldn't exist. Like I don't think Codex of Frailty should exist. I don't think Blood Rush Bellow should exist.
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing I was thinking about too, is that like a Codex of Frailty makes all of your auras attack for less.
Yeah.
So like, because they technically are weapon attacks on your turns, that card's pretty good against Enigma actually. So
yeah, there's a lot of heroes that are doing really broken things. That's why I'm like not like Enigma's going to be the best hero in the game, but she's doing some broken things. So
yeah.
There are some pretty effective counters to Enigma that we've already found in limited testing. New, and I think it's just a generic assassin card, Pick to Pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Card's so scary. if any damage leaks, just everything you have with Ward just blows up.
So I was playing against New in like my second to last round in the Battle Hardened, and I was at 1 life, and I actually flipped up my heirloom of the rabbit hide was my only chess piece I could really play. So I had Ward 4 on that, and then I had like a red waxing specter, and I had my gloves flipped up. So I had like Ward like 8 on the battlefield. And my opponent attacks me with red Pick to Pieces. In my hand is like a chi card, a non-block, and a 3-block. And I died.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
How it is, kind of.
So yeah, definitely a terrifying card, and I definitely will have some number of Pick to Pieces. Maybe even Malign is also another red stealth card. Damage from Malign can't be prevented. You definitely want some of that card effects, just because clearing out the wards efficiently like that is just so good and so important against New or Enigma.
Yeah, against Enigma. Azalea also gets access to Murkmire Grapple. I guess Riptide does as well if you're playing Riptide, which also lines up pretty well against these shields. It's just a 0 for 4 red arrow that says damage can't be prevented, and if it has an aim counter, I think it gets +1, but that part of the text doesn't come up very often. Yeah. I guess it could as a not target.
Another interesting card that might see play now was the attack reaction from Dusk Till Dawn, the Dorinthia specialization Chorus of Iron Song. That one gives until end of turn, target Dawnblade gets +1, and damage it would deal can't be prevented. Mm-hmm. So before it was kind of a meme where it's like, oh, if your opponent plays Oasis Respite, you can get them with your Chorus of Iron Song. Like it wasn't a real reason to play it. The Enigma and all this ward floating around gives you a really real reason to play that card.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's one last option that I know of that everyone has access to at generic, and this card was another meme. It was like, this is going to fix the Crown of Seeds problem, but it was just that the Crown of Seeds decks just played against each other and nobody else really wanted it. It's Vambrace of Determination. It's the legendary gloves that you can spend a resources and attack reaction to ignore the first 1 prevention that would be applied this turn, basically. So it's not like these other effects where it's just going to wipe a board if it hits, but it can be pretty nifty to clear out one extra shield or be the difference maker between clearing a real aura and not.
Yeah. And then did you already mention Tiger Stripe Shuko?
Nope, that's a good one too. One matters.
Tiger Stripe Shuko. Vincent, they're playing the shadow card. That could be the best rune chant of all time. The goated rune chant that just can't be prevented, wiping out like 15 damage of ward.
Yeah, Vincent looks like she's gonna be pretty good against Enigma. Just as long as you can find shadow non-attack actions with Go Again, you're chilling. You're ready.
Yeah. And I think last but not least, if I'm looking correctly on this list, actually it is least, but not in our hearts, Rock.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that until I pulled up this list where damage that would be dealt by Rock can't be prevented.
Yeah.
It's two-handed, so KO can't rock it. But Levia and Rhinar, game on.
Rock's...
You want to fix your Enigma matchup? Just throw some Rock in it.
I actually don't think a Rock deck would even line up that well against Enigma, because you have to empty your hand before you can attack with Rock. So it's not like you can react over her block. So she can cover it up for 7 and then like hit you with her auras.
Yeah. Roll scab skins, play 2 energy potions, crack your energy potion.
I'm saying even if you do the thing to attack with rock, like obviously if you do something proactive into rock every turn, that's going to be good because rock is a 1 card 7 basically. But if that was a thing, people would already be doing it. So whatever concessions you got to make to make rock work, I don't think Enigma. I don't think Enigma is a good reason to jump through those hoops.
One day, rock. One day, we'll make that good, but I don't think today's that day.
Yeah. So you mentioned Shimmers of Silver, and I didn't really talk about this card, but it's really good in Cosmo because any of your auras that don't have a counter on them, now they get a counter on them and they get go again, which is really good. On top of just doing 1 extra damage, getting an extra action point, that's a lot of value there. So Shimmers also is very good.
Yeah. And then what's this one? What's the one that when something else dies, it gets a +1/+1 counter?
Phantom Tidemaw.
Phantom Tidemaw. That's an old card too. It was from Dynasty.
Yeah, this card got printed and everyone laughed at it. They're like, "Why would you play this over a Spectra card?" But
and now it sits on the battlefield. I'm like, it's attacking me for like 7, and I'm like, I just want to hit the Tidemaw, and there's a million other wards that just eat the ward first, and I'm like, I just want to hit the Tidemaw, and then I don't want to hit the Tidemaw, and then it gets bigger and bigger, and I'm like, I just wanted the Tidemaw gone, please.
Yeah,
and it never goes away.
Yeah, it does have Phantasm, so if you are a deck that naturally includes poppers, you're kind of already insured against it. But against those decks, you can kind of run into an issue where like first, they might not even play it against you, or it might not even be part of a deck. I don't think every Enigma deck is going to play Tidemaw, but it also can just hold counters, and you have a few other cards that get better if you have counters on other things. For example, Restless Coalescence, it's the yellow majestic 0 cost, and when it enters, you can move any number of +1 counters from auras you control onto it. So you can just, if you have 4 counters on your Tidemaw, you can just play a Restless Coalescence, move the 4 counters onto it. It doesn't have Phantasm, so it can hit you it has Ward 2 naturally, so it can hit you for 6. And then it can also once per turn convert one of those counters into a Spectral Shield, which refeeds the Tidemaw again.
Yeah.
When those die.
It's a really frustrating loop you can get locked in, it feels like.
Yeah. So I think a lot of Enigma games are going to be just like, they're kind of like a deck check in a similar way that Fatigue was a deck check, where you need to be able to present large amounts of damage every turn in order to clear these wards, or at least threaten to clear the wards, or have damage that's really hard for her to block efficiently. Like ninjas come to mind as an example of like their damage is split up pretty well. And yeah, the Spectral Shields can help cover some of it, but with Shuko and with multiple sources of small amounts of damage, I think it can be a pretty big pain for Enigma to try to block out and preserve wards.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I would say, I know we talked about Shuko as one of the sources, but I feel like Shuko is probably not it. Because like I feel like what's going to happen is the Shuko attack's going to come up, and you're just going to put like literal any blocking card in front of it, and it's not like ninjas usually can like attack react over fairly often, you know?
Yeah, there is a card that plays really well with Shuko. It's a limited medium playable Maul. It's the yellow majestic that gives an attack with 1 or less base power +3 power. So that plays really nicely with your Shuko attack, where you attack with your Shuko thing, and then if they block, you can pump it over with Maul.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, that's
yeah, maybe Razor Reflex makes a comeback, but we'll see.
Yeah, Ancestral Empowerment can work if it's a ninja attack, though. I guess the Tigers are ninja attacks, so yeah, it's not too hard to get a ninja attack, but it's only +1.
Nah. Mm-hmm. So like if it's an attack for 2, if it's like a base attack 1, it gets pumped to 2, and then they block with a 3 block. It's like, oh,
yeah, it doesn't work anymore.
What do you think? So we talked about Guardian. I think we talked about this a little bit. You think Azalea could be problematic just because of Murkmire Grapple, basically?
I think the combination of Dominate with Murkmire Grapple could be pretty problematic, because knock into Murkmire, you can't block it, and it's just going to kill all your Spectra, or not Spectra, all your ward stuff. I'm not sure if there's really a good way to be able to block out a dominated Murkmire. You can load your deck up with like big D-reacts, but that comes with its own problems. Like if you're just playing a bunch of red unmovables, then that's rough. And then the way a lot of like fatigue decks have gone about fighting Azalea's Dominate is using these damage prevention effects like Oasis Respite and Steadfast and effects like that, maybe even Peace of Mind. But you can't, that doesn't work against Murkmire because it stops damage from being prevented. So I think that is just going to be a tough thing for Enigma to deal with, getting dominated Murkmired. Even just undominated Murkmire is sometimes your hand only has 2 block cards and you're relying on your ward to cover some of it up.
Yeah, it's just like if they don't see the Murkmires or the Murkmires don't line up against, or you do have a D-reactor or some other way to cover it up, like the ward obviously is just going to be such a nice way to cover up all the rest of the dominated damage that Azalea is often presenting. And I will say a card that you talked about, maybe red unmovable, I think just now. A card that I really liked so far in new even was blue unmovable, just because you're going to have, you want blue cards obviously for your pitching, playing, activating, all that stuff. And you're going to have a lot of these no blocking your cheat cards then, but basically the blue unmovable lets you kind of also play your blue if you have other cheat cards to then, do the thing and transcend. But also if you just have the cheat card that doesn't block, then the unmovable is a good way to kind of get your like 2-card 6, especially from Arsenal still on defense. So I expect that card to be really helpful in a lot of spots for these kind of longer grindier Mystic heroes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the Mystic Majestic defense reaction that's blue also, I think, could potentially be in that same slot or fill a similar role where I can't remember the name of it. Let me see if I have it somewhere. I lost it. It's a 5-block blue, Unravel Aggression. It's a 5-block blue that costs 3 to play, and if a chi was pitched to play this, you draw a card. That's a pretty high upside if you do pitch a chi to it. You get to replace the one of the 2 cards, so you're basically getting a 2-card 5 draw a card that doesn't cost an action point because you're using it on defense. I think that card is also potentially pretty solid in these Mystic heroes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, definitely pitching a chi and the card replacing itself. I know you were playing a little bit with that card, and it actually looked really good in the matchup where like you just were able to kind of like block for 5, be really efficient, and then the card kind of like you got like your card back, so you just kind of got this free 5 block essentially. Obviously when you are not pitching a chi to it, it looks a lot worse because then you're just 2-card 5ing, but you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
Yeah
It's better to 2-block 5 than to 0 block sometimes.
Yeah, 5 can be also hitting a break point that you can't normally reach with 1 card very efficiently. So if they attack you for 5, then it can line up really well.
Yeah, for sure. What about the biggest ward, the tallest ward, the 10,000 year reunion? Are you going to reunion some people? Are you going to ward 10?
Yeah,
you're the guardian now.
I think the verdict's out on that one. I think its best use is actually in matchups where they are trying to send a big attack against you, like for example KO or Azalea or Guardian, where the ward 10 you can actually prevent 10 damage with it and get full value on defense with it, because it doesn't naturally have go again when you play it, so it can be kind of hard to play it and attack with it. You can use Mage Master Boots or the new shoes to play it as an instant if you pitch a chi, but your chi is already kind of taxed, so it's not like every time you draw a chi you can use the new boots to just instant speed this in, though it is pretty strong when you do that. But the cost of 8 is really, really high to pay, especially for a thing without natural go again. But the other line of text on it, you may remove 3+1 counters from among auras you control rather than pay this card's resource cost. I think that actually might be enough to just push it over the line, where there will be times where you'll do a thing and you'll have a phantom Tide Maw with some counters on it, and you can just remove 3 counters from that and play this thing. Or you play the 3-cost Transcend Majestic that's Enigma only, that Sacred Art Immortal Lunar Shrine, and that makes 2 spectral shields and then puts a +1 counter on each aura with ward you control, and it transcends itself if you played another blue. So if you have this and then you have the big guy in your hand, you can make 2 auras, put a counter on each aura you have. If you have one other aura, that's enough to then use the boots and play your big 10,000 year thing. And if you don't have the boots, you can just pitch the chi to Enigma's hero power, make a 3rd shield with a +1 counter on it, and then you have the 3 across the 3 shields to play the big aura. So I think the verdict's out on this one still. Definitely worth testing.
Yeah. And I guess you kind of touched on it there. Do you want to talk about kind of Enigma's equipment suite at the moment? I think it's kind of, that's a little contentious between Phantasmal Footsteps and Meridian Pathway. But I think the other 3 slots are pretty well settled, right?
I'm not sure. It's probably too early to say what's well settled. These are just like my first opinions on things. I also haven't exactly looked at what the community's been up to yet too much. But
sure,
Tunic is a broken chess piece. If you don't have something really strong to be doing in your chess slot, you should probably play Tunic. I don't think Enigma has any options at the chess slot that really compete with Tunic, so I think you should probably just play Tunic.
You have that weird one that like whenever a thing with ward dies,
oh, the kimono.
Resource. Yeah, but like
you get a resource, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, that there is a world where you would play that. I think that one's more of it feels more like a blitz card to me than a CC card, because you're not going to be able to protect it for that long in proportion to how long a constructed game is. Whereas in blitz, like you might get 1 Tunic resource, so getting 2 resources out of this is probably better than what you get out of a Tunic.
Yeah, and I think they realized the issue, like with the Dynasty Ward 1 pieces of equipment, and that's kind of how they came to Cloak, because it sucks when you like you're on like the play or whatever and you have your ward piece of equipment, because it's an interesting concept, but like you just kind of get blown out where you just like leak a point of damage on turn 0 or turn 1 and then like your equipment's just gone for the rest of the game, and you like that just is a pretty bad, feels bad. But the cloaked mechanic solves that really nicely. Like the fact that then you get to choose when your ward equipment flips over, I think was like a really, really interesting innovation that they came up with.
Yeah, I agree. It is really cool. I was a little disappointed that we didn't get to see a legendary cloaked equipment. I thought we would see something like really powerful that used that mechanic when they spoiled it, but we didn't. I don't think there's really any. I don't think there's. Well, actually, the gloves do have cloak and ward, so I shouldn't say I don't think there's any, but there's not like any bomb level, really, really powerful equipment that use that. It's just like some things that fill roles that have it.
I think the gloves are close to a bomb level, like piece of equipment in Enigma.
Interesting. So we'll talk.
It's like getting an action point off of your gloves.
Kind of. So the gloves that we're talking about are Uphold Tradition. They're the cloak gloves that instant you pay 1 to turn it face up and put a +1 counter on an aura you control with ward, and they have ward 1 themselves. So you can kind of use them to pay a resource to put a counter on an aura you're attacking with, which if you're playing Cosmo, your auras that have 1 or more +1 counters on them get go again. So you can use Uphold Tradition to get that extra action point, and then they have ward 1. I think that's fair. I do think they are probably maybe a similar power level to like Snapdragon Scalers and some of the aggro decks, which is like it's a solid shoe option, but the main reason that people are playing Snapdragon Scalers is because there's not like a powerful legendary in that slot.
Yeah, but to quote another prominent Flesh and Blood podcast, it breaks the core tenets of Flesh and Blood, the core principles of the game, where your arm pieces aren't supposed to give you action points, Michael. Your arm pieces are supposed to give you power. And having a slot of arms giving you action points is a lot different than your Snapdragon Scalers giving you action points at the foot slot, I guess. Like,
sure.
It's just kind of muddying the waters between what the equipment slots are like fundamentally supposed to do, right?
Yeah, but I don't think it's problematic. Like if they had a card that said, if this power has been increased, it gets go again, then Goliath Gauntlet with that card wouldn't be problematic, I don't think. It's just like, it's like Cosmo's giving the go again. The gloves are just putting a +1 counter on something, which is like not weird. I think if you look at Rune Chance, though, the Grasp of the Arknight's kind of been breaking this for a long time, where there's a lot of cards that got their cost reduced by Rune Chance, and Grasp of the Arknight makes a Rune Chance, so Grasp of the Arknight's producing resources, kind of, if you're looking at it this way. And this,
true, yeah.
It's
we've talked about that before, but we also said Grasp of the Arknight used to be like the best equipment in the game for a long time.
Yeah, it's still one of the best. It's just there's a lot of really good ones now. So
yeah, true.
Just some other classes have caught up.
Yeah, but what do you think of the Meridian pathway? I know some people are kind of low on it, but it's looked really impressive in the games we played so far.
Yeah, I really like Meridian pathway. When I read this card, I didn't really understand that whenever you pitch a chi, you may have this get ward 3 until end of turn. It just means that at some point, when you're going to pitch a chi anyway, you can just cash these shoes in for 3 life.
That's really a lot of value. Yeah.
So I think they kind of remind me a little bit actually of what are those shoes, the Guardian shoes called, the 3-block Guardian shoes that give a Quicken token.
I don't remember.
Civic
I don't
Steps.
remember
Civic
Guardian
Steps.
cards anymore.
Got it. They kind of remind me of
blocked
Civic
all the
Steps,
Guardian cards out of my memory at this point. It's no point in knowing what they do.
Where your goal is to get 3 life out of this thing. Occasionally, you can use it to protect a shield, but a lot of the time, you're just trying to figure out how can I get 3 life out of this without like being inefficient in any way? Because a lot of the time, it's hard to pitch a chi on your opponent's turn and also be in a spot where you're going to take 3 damage. So like the D-React we talked about, the one that is a 3 for 5 and you draw a card if you pitch a chi. That's a really easy way to pitch a chi on your opponent's turn. But if you're playing a 5-block D-React, a lot of the time they're not going to be hitting you for 8. So you can't always catch your shoes in right then.
Yeah. Her hero ability, I mean, it always gives you an instant way to activate.
Yeah. And that's true. But in that spot, you need to be taking not more than 3 damage. Otherwise, you're going to be losing your shield.
True.
And if you're losing your shield, suddenly you're spending a card and your shoes for 4 points of value, which is not good.
Yeah, but if your hand's all chi at the end game, you got to do what you got to do, Michael.
That is true. If your hand is 4 chi, then...
That's been a really interesting thing I've noticed about these Mystic heroes in endgames. You don't get to it as much in Classic Constructed, but particularly in Limited, like the all chi endgame hands. We saw the finals of the Calling kind of work out with that, with Michael Fung just having 1,000,000 chi in his hand and kind of just dying to any old attack. It's just like there's such an interesting like long game almost concession to having these cards be in your deck.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I really like the design of it, like top to bottom. I think like there's so many interesting, small, nuanced things going on that I really enjoy about this set.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like if you are one of those decks, it's going to get to your late game where you have a bunch of chi. There's what is the 9 cost thing called?
Oh, the stupid meme card that attacks for 20.
I don't think that card's a meme.
I think that card's a meme. Cosmic Awakening.
Yeah, you can include Cosmic Awakening in your deck if your deck is a deck that is having that happen a lot, where you can pitch 3 chi and play this card and it attacks for 20. And a 4-card 20, especially when it's 4 blues, that's just like real
sure.
fun.
I guess in Limited, I'm about this card. In Constructed, I'm dubious.
Yeah, I do think that it is kind of hard to have a constructed deck that reliably gets to this point with how good the heroes are at attacking. And honestly, how mediocre all the Mystic Heroes blocking equipment is. None of them are the best at blocking. They have some 2 blocks, but I don't think any of them have 3-block gloves. Or I guess Enigma kind of has 3-block shoes, but like, none of them are great at blocking.
You do, but you have to be at 1 life.
Well, no. If you pitch a chi on your opponent's turn, you get ward 3 out of them.
No, I'm talking about the equipment that, like when the chess pieces that they all have, the rare chess pieces, when you're at 1 life, you can flip it over. And Enigma's has ward 4. News has Battle Worn 2. And Zen's has Blade Break 3. So that's all pretty high rates of absorption and defense on your equipment. You just have to be at 1 life.
Yeah, you got to start your turn at 1 life. That's all.
Yeah, easy.
I mean, it does happen in a decent percentage of games without even like trying to navigate them that way. But it's just not something that you can super rely on.
Yeah, I think in Limited, all those are fine. I think in Limited, those make sense. And I think people might be a little too low on them.
Mm-hmm.
because they're like one life, and even I was saying like, oh, one life, that's really scary, but uh basically kind of the play pattern, we're jumping all over the place now, where you just wait on all the rest of your equipment, your cloak equipment that also helps absorb damage and stuff like that, and just try to maneuver into being at one life, and then you can kind of use that piece to kind of absorb a thing in your other equipment to help supplement, and then like play out a game, and hopefully your opponent's low enough that like then you can kind of steal the game.
Yeah. I do think the cloak prevent one armor does do a lot to help you get to exactly one and not below one and not to two or whatever. You can get exactly one pretty commonly with those.
We've been jumping all around the place, Michael. Any concise final thoughts you want to talk about then on this Enigma hero, or is she just too unknowable, too illusionisty to uncover the enigma that is this hero?
I think she's really cool. I think there's the power level is there. I think it feels like it's there. There's a lot to figure out. She's a very weird hero, and I don't think it's going to be like, it wouldn't surprise me if she doesn't do super well at nationals. I think like long term, eventually, I think she will get found out, and she'll probably be at least a solid tier 2 deck. Maybe one of the best decks, maybe the tier 2 deck. But the powers, I'm pretty sure the power is there, and I really like that there's heroes that get to play 30 plus blues in their deck that are at least in a better spot than Guardians are, even if they're not Eyesighter tier.
Yeah. If history is any indicator as to anything going forward, it's going to be that illusionists, even if they are actually unplayable to meme unplayable, they'll still be like anywhere between 10 to 20% of the metagame all the time between her and Prism. Like it doesn't matter, Michael. It doesn't matter if her power level's like a little low. Like people are just gonna be like, oh yeah, I love Enigma, I love Illusionist, let's go. And it's just like, okay, cool. All right.
That's true.
And then if history is also an indicator, LSS will just do nothing but print more broken Illusionists expansion slot cards in every set going forward for the rest of time.
Ooh, a new
Dromai's not even available, and they're still putting expansion slot cards for her.
That's true. I don't think I honestly think that might have something to do with why they made the Living Legend change, where they're like the big events are giving less points, because they couldn't have expected that to happen. I'm sure they knew it was a possibility, but like you can either not put a Dromai card in or put a Dromai card in, and if she does bad at the tournament where you expect KO to be one of the best decks, then I think that's a reasonable expectation that Dromai would do bad when KO is one of the best decks, and she might just like not like be in that Briar state where she was just like stuck at the edge for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of the risk you play with the system that kind of they've developed, where you never know when somebody's going to go, and that's kind of like what makes it interesting from like a metagame perspective, or like just an overall like player base and engagement thing. But from like a design standpoint, like that also makes it really frustrating, because could be expecting one metagame and one subset of things happening, and then all of a sudden freaking unplayable Dromai wins a Pro Tour, and then she's gone, and it's like, who knows what's going to happen. Like that kind of stuff can just like keep happening. Or like Dash has never been like a tier 1 hero or whatever, but she's like already like more than halfway to almost 3/4 of the way to Living Legend at this point.
Yeah. I think she was a tier 1 hero in the narrow window between Crucible and Monarch, but we didn't play then, so that's not.
Sure. Fair enough. Well, the next time you're a tier 1 hero in between the limited window of Crucible and Monarch,